December 16th, 1944. Imagine standing in a dense, snow-covered forest, knowing that a shell flying toward you will explode on impact, and you dig in, knowing the ground will protect you. You've survived the Eastern Front. You know this war. Now imagine hearing the familiar scream of American artillery, but instead of the predictable crunch of impact, the shells are detonating in mid-air, 30 feet above your head, turning the forest canopy into a hurricane of metal fragments and wooden splinters. There is no safe zone. There is no cover. There is no escape. The very air has become a killing zone. This was the terrifying reality German soldiers faced at the start of the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944. They had just encountered the most closely guarded secret in the Allied arsenal, the proximity fuse. This tiny, self-contained radar system, no larger than a coffee can, was about to multiply the lethality of artillery by 50 times, instantly transforming warfare and ensuring Hitler's last gamble would fail. The men caught under this storm couldn't know they were casualties not just of a battle, but of a revolution in military science that changed everything. The date was December 16th, 1944. The frozen earth near Monschau, Germany shuddered as the massive German offensive, Operation Watch on the Rhine, began. Hitler's last-ditch gamble was initially a success, achieving complete tactical surprise. But at Monschau, Colonel Oscar Alfred Axelson of the 406th Artillery Group faced an impossible situation. His small American reconnaissance unit was being overwhelmed. Conventional fire wouldn't stop the German assault. In a desperate, unauthorized decision that risks a court-martial, he ordered his gunners to load shells equipped with the secret proximity fuses. The effect was immediate and devastating. German soldiers, who had survived years of trench and forest warfare, were cut down in foxholes, behind trees, and in ditches, anywhere they had sought shelter. The shells exploded 50 feet above them, covering a vastly wider area than ground-burst shrapnel. Axelson had violated direct orders that restricted the fuses to anti-aircraft use, the fear being that a captured example could be reverse-engineered. But the German attack was stopped cold, and the horrifying effectiveness of the new weapon was undeniable. The proximity fuse was a marvel of American scientific and industrial power. Inside each fuse, engineers had packed over 100 electronic components, including 4 or 5 miniature vacuum tubes. These tubes had to withstand the crushing force of being fired from a cannon, an incredible 20,000 times gravity. The science was staggering. The firing impact created a battery, powering a tiny radar that sent out waves. As the shell neared the ground or a target, the reflected signal strengthened. At a predetermined optimal height, 30 feet for a 105mm shell, the fuse detonated. Security surrounding the project, driven by Dr. Merle Tovey at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, matched the intensity of the Manhattan Project. The technical hurdle of miniaturizing vacuum tubes, normally found in living room radios, to withstand being fired and function while spinning at extreme speeds, was only overcome through breakthroughs that later underpinned the entire electronics industry. By December 1944, American factories, with the help of over 100 companies like RCA and General Electric, were producing 40,000 proximity fuses daily. The success at Monschau was rapidly communicated to Supreme Headquarters. General Eisenhower, recognizing the desperate situation across the Ardennes, formally requested authorization. By December 21st, all restrictions were lifted. The quick distribution that followed was a testament to American logistics. Within days, these new shells were being delivered to artillery units across the battlefield, transforming every gun from a support weapon into a decisive battlefield tool. The siege of Bastogne became the perfect demonstration. The surrounded 101st Airborne held the vital crossroads, their artillery firing proximity-fused shells against repeated German assaults. German assault formations simply melted away under the precise airburst barrages. The all-African-American 969th Artillery Battalion, with its 155mm howitzers, created an impenetrable ring of death, forcing German prisoners to report that their attacking units lost cohesion before they even reached American lines. Perhaps the most stark demonstration of the fuse's lethality occurred at the Sauer River near Echternach on Christmas Day. General George S. Patton, whose Third Army was driving north to relieve Bastogne, recorded the event in his memoirs. The German battalion attempting a hidden crossing was caught in the open. Patton wrote, "We caught a German battalion crossing the Sauer. The new posit ammunition was devastating. The shells burst in the air above them. they had nowhere to run. When the firing stopped, the Americans counted 702 bodies. A single German battalion essentially ceased to exist in minutes. The Ardennes' dense forests, which the Germans relied on for concealment, now became death traps. In the forest, the airbursts shattered tree branches, creating thousands of additional wooden projectiles that flew at lethal speeds. Traditional foxholes and cover behind trees became useless as the fragments and splinters came from above, negating centuries of tactical wisdom about forest fighting. The psychological impact was immense. German units trained in forest warfare found their expertise worthless. The German intelligence failure regarding the proximity fuse was catastrophic. German technical experts who examined captured fuses actually declared them impossible. The presence of tiny vacuum tubes in an artillery shell simply contradicted everything German engineers believed about electronics and ballistics. The great irony was that Germany had actually led early fuse development, but had terminated the program after Hitler demanded all weapons be ready in under 6 months. German engineers refused to believe the Americans had solved problems they themselves had abandoned. The Christmas catastrophe continued. On Christmas Day, supply convoys, field kitchens, and assembly areas came under devastating bombardment that required no forward observers. The proximity fuse transformed artillery from a daylight weapon into a 24-hour threat, eliminating the sanctuary German soldiers had sought during poor weather and darkness. Death could now arrive at any moment, in any weather, with no warning beyond the brief whistle of the incoming shell.
The industrial miracle behind the fuse was equally stunning. The Crosley Corporation abandoned refrigerator manufacturing for fuse assembly, while Sylvania and RCA retooled entire facilities. Quality control was ruthless, with every soldered joint inspected under magnification and random samples test-fired to ensure survival. The predominantly female workforce, operating under intense secrecy, produced one fuse every 2 seconds. By the end of the war, this efficiency had driven the cost down from over $700 per unit to just $18 per unit. General Patton understood the weapon's value better than anyone. His Third Army fired 50,000 proximity-fused shells in a single week to break the German resistance around Bastogne. Patton himself wrote, "The funny fuse won the Battle of the Bulge for us." The Battle of Elsenborn Ridge demonstrated its maximum effectiveness, where American artillery fired 160,000 rounds, with the 25% that were proximity-fused accounting for an estimated 60% of German casualties. The elite Waffen-SS were broken by American technology, with bodies piling so thick that subsequent waves had to climb over their own dead. The final bitter realization came after the war. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt stated, "The proximity fuse was decisive. Our attacks broke down not because of American courage, but because of artillery that seemed to have eyes." The statistics tell the story. 200,000 proximity-fused shells accounted for an estimated 15,000 to 20,000 German casualties, achieving 5 to 10 times greater effectiveness than conventional ammunition. The weapon was a war winner. The technological legacy of the proximity fuse extended far beyond the battlefield. The miniaturized vacuum tubes became the foundation for modern electronics. The quality control and organizational methods pioneered in its production laid the groundwork for modern supply chain management and the entire electronics industry. The radar principles evolved into modern systems, and the concept of an autonomous sensor making its own decisions became the foundation for guided missiles and every smart weapon today. The Battle of the Bulge cost Germany approximately 100,000 casualties and ended Hitler's last offensive. The proximity fuse proved itself not just as an artillery improvement, but as a revolutionary technology that fundamentally changed the mathematics of warfare. The German soldiers who died beneath those airbursts were casualties of a revolution in military affairs that continues to shape our world. The story of the proximity fuse is ultimately about how scientific innovation, backed by industrial democracy, can provide a decisive military advantage.